like me.
All right, everybody, welcome to The Fluent. We're moving on from just sports, although, of course, we got to start our first episode of The Fluent with someone in sports. Taylor Mathis, how are you doing?
I am doing absolutely wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
So for those that don't know, you are a host, a reporter, a content creator for Superbook Sports.
That is
And,
right.
and I want to ask, are you the self-proclaimed prop bet princess, or did someone give you that title?
I mean, I didn't personally come up with it myself. My agents, honestly, are really pushing the prop princess movement because that's really what I focus on when it comes to sports gambling is prop betting. And that's the type of picks that I like to give. And I've had a couple of months where I went on major heaters and won several in a row. So I'm slightly self-proclaimed, but
Okay.
also it's
So
kind
you're
of my
earning
niche
you're
area.
earning the moniker.
I'm earning the title.
Okay. It's not like Kobe just calling himself Black Mamba. Now you got to call him.
Yeah.
Like someone else kind of
Right.
gave it to you. Okay.
Right.
We're going to get to prop bets because I will tell you that prop bets is actually what got me kind of hooked on gambling. So, and I'll tell you why when we get there. But first, I want to go back because, like I said, we're talking about more than just sports. So I know that you're from Chicago. I love the picture in the background, by the way. As you can
Thank
see,
you.
I love the city of Chicago and my Chicago Bears. But I saw your background. You go from Chicago to Iowa to Arizona. So you got to
Yeah.
explain to me how that happens.
So I went from Chicago to Iowa to Nebraska to Dallas / Arizona. So I've been all over the place a little bit, but mostly just because of my career. I was born and raised in a really small town in Illinois, actually called Sandwich, literally just like a sandwich that you eat.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
I was born and raised there. And then for school, I ended up going to the University of Iowa, and I went there for sports broadcasting specifically. And right out of college, my first job was at a small station in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, being a sports reporter and host at a local TV station. So that's kind of where I got my first break into television and hosting and working in sports, everything like that. And then from there, I transitioned to a digital company, which was actually located in Dallas. I was covering NFL for a while there, but I lived in Scottsdale, but then also part-time lived in Dallas was the way it kind of worked. So I was in between both of those places, then ended up being full-time here in Arizona. And I covered the Suns for 2 seasons and sideline reported, which was super fun. And then COVID hit and I got laid off, and I got approached by a company to get into sports gambling and betting. And I knew absolutely nothing about sports gambling. I had no idea what I was doing, but they were like, we will teach you, we'll help. And I got very into it. And now that's where I'm at. That's my space. That's my spot. And I absolutely love it. And I'm like, I wish I would have gotten into this sooner.
So I got to go back a step because I didn't realize that you went to the University of Iowa for sports journalism. So
I did.
Where did the kind of either sports obsession, or when did it click that, hey, I want to be in sports for my career, for my livelihood?
So weirdly enough, growing up, I played 0 sports. I mean, I was a competitive cheerleader, which I consider a sport, but there's a lot of haters out there, I know, that are going to say it's not. But I competitively cheered my whole life. I never was like a softball player, basketball, anything like that. But I also grew up a big theater nerd. I sang and I acted pretty much since the age of 4. And that's really where I kind of got my love of being in front of people type of thing. And my grandpa would always tell me like, oh, you're so good at being in front of a crowd. You're very good at performing. And oh gosh, I don't know how old he was. I was 5. He took me to my first Cubs game, and I absolutely just fell in love with baseball. He taught me how to do a scorecard. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I was like, I just love baseball. I became so diehard obsessed with the Cubs growing up is where it really started. I was such a little nerd. I would my sister and I would watch the games at home. We make up cheers for each person. And I grew up back when it was like Derek Lee, Aramis Ramirez, Corey Patterson.
I got to call timeout. I'm not big on interrupting when you're in the middle of a story. I do appreciate, but when you say you would make up cheers, Like, what would
All
be like an example of one
right,
of the cheers that you?
here you go. All right, so Juan Pierre played for the Cubs back during this time, which I can't even believe I still remember this. But the cheer was, "What don't you know about Juan Pierre? He hits balls way up in the air where you can't see him anywhere. Say hey."
Sorry,
I was
hey.
here for Juan Pierre. We had several for all the different players, but that's an example. So we would watch the games at home. We cheer like in our living room at home for the Cubs. Super obsessed. And I just grew up really loving baseball. But then my dad's a big football guy, and I'm a Cowboys fan, which we kind of talked about. But he's born and
Yeah, I'm gonna
raised.
let that slide. I was hoping you wouldn't bring it up again, but I
Yeah.
guess the
Well,
helmet in the background's a dead giveaway for anyone
yeah,
watching.
he's born and raised in Iowa. You know, he didn't grow up with a pro team. So that was kind of, he fell in love with Troy Aikman, Emmett Smith, Michael Irving. Those were his guys, and that's who was on TV back in the day for him to watch. And he raised me a Cowboys fan. So football and baseball is like where it started. And my mom really grew up on the basketball side, though, because her dad, my grandpa, the one who's a diehard Cubs guy, he was a basketball coach growing up my entire life. So those were kind of the three sports that I was always intertwined with. I grew into loving hockey because I grew up in the Chicago area, and who didn't love the Blackhawks back when they were like a dynasty? It was so fun. So I grew up just loving sports. And then I kind of combined my love of being in front and performing with sports. And my grandpa was like, "I think you'd be so great as a journalist doing TV or radio, things like that." And I was like, you know what? When I went to college, I was like, I should combine these two things. So that's why I ended up going to school for sports journalism.
All right.
Long, very long story thought
No,
out
but
there, but
it's
that's how
better.
it
It's
happened.
better than I just flipped a coin and it happened to be like
And
the
I
thing there.
said sports
So
journalism.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. So there's a history. There's a history there. So
Yeah, for sure.
I mentioned kind of in the intro, because I'm going to ask you your favorite part of what you're doing now, because I've never been kind of, I've never bet on sports. Like I've, fantasy football, I do football
Right.
pools, basketball, that sort of thing. And I have a cousin who's very into gambling. Like probably,
Uh-huh.
I hate to say this because I know he's watching probably too much. We should get
Too
you some
much.
help.
Yeah.
But that being said, he was at my place and we were, watching a bunch of games and he's like, hey, and he had like all these, all his tickets. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I have all these prop bets. And I said, what's that?
Uh-huh.
He said, you don't know? And I said, no. He said, okay, at halftime, we're gonna go. So I'm very fortunate about a 2-minute walking distance away from where I was at that. We could walk to a corner store and bet.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, okay, we're going to take it. We're going to make some prop bets at halftime. I was like, what? At halftime, you're making bets? He said, oh, yeah. So we rush over to the store. He brings up this big card and he goes, okay, I forget the name of the players, but let's just, this running back, is he going to rush, for more or less than 50 yards in the second half? And I'm like, I don't know. Are they going to get more than 3 sacks combined? And I'm like, I have no idea and I'm just guessing. So I fill out this card. It's like a $5 bet. I pick, I don't know, 6 or 8 different things. The payout is what, like $250 or something, right? Because it was 6, 7. I win.
So of course you start with the winner, you're hooked.
Now I'm hooked, right? Because he's like, I don't understand. I've been playing this for months, and here you are, first try, but I haven't won since. Well, maybe one, but I got that beginner's luck. I said I should have quit while I was ahead. So now I'm obsessed. So now you're doing this, and you even mentioned you wish you would have started it sooner.
Yes.
So what is it about it that kind of got you hooked? And like, what's your favorite part of getting to do this every day?
I think, well, part of my favorite part of my job is obviously being in front of the camera and being able to kind of spew off my knowledge of what I'm talking about. I love that part of it, but I also think my favorite part when it comes specifically to sports betting is I really like the fact that, yes, of course you're gambling. Like it's a 50-50 chance you're going to win or lose, but you can look at so many stats and trends and things that are happening to kind of give your analysis and why you're picking something. And that's like part of my favorite part of my morning and part of my routine now is I get up, the first thing I do is research my plays. Like I start looking at lines and then I start researching my props, what I think looks good, what doesn't. And then I come up with what my top prop of the day is going to be.
And then you share that.
Yes.
Is it at T-Mats? Like, where do you share it on? Is it on the Twitter mostly, or?
Team at Sports Twitter is like for sure where I make sure I get out my play every single day the most. And then of course, like TikTok, TikTok, you gotta like kind of keep up with the trends of what's happening to get views and things like that. It's not as much.
I've tried. I'm a
do it.
terrible dancer. I'm a pretty good lip syncer. But yes, I
I
try,
feel
but
ya.
it's tough.
I
It's
feel
tough.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, I feel like in my other areas where I get to actually be on camera or give my analysis a bit more, that's kind of more of my bread and butter because it feels more natural to me. Feels a little bit more, I don't want to say I'm super uniformed because I'm not super uniformed and buttoned up type of sports personality, but it's a little bit more structured as compared to like, let's make some TikTok with the dance to give
So
off
so
this.
so
Like
so you mean so you
this.
mean so you mean when I'm like um Michael Jordan was born in Brooklyn. Now you're more
Right.
fluent. That's not a good, it's not,
Right.
it's not.
I mean, it probably will get you more views, but
No, I think
it
people
just
turn
doesn't,
it off when they see me do it. But yeah, okay.
it just doesn't give as much. I feel like I don't get to show as much of my knowledge
Right.
as I do in on other platforms and in other ways.
So you mentioned your knowledge. So let's start with the good. So you said you went on some heaters. What's like the longest or best or most memorable
Best.
kind of streak that you've gone on?
So in March, I only lost 5 bets total the entire month.
Out
So
of how many?
every
Ish.
single day. So 31 bets. It actually
Wow.
it might have been more than that now that I think about it. Cause there were a couple days where I gave 3 prop bets a day. So it was probably in like the 40s. And yeah, I only lost 5 bets the entire month. All basically prop bets for
Like
the
March
most part
this year?
this past March.
Oh, I should
Yeah,
have been
I
paying attention before to
89 I think it was an 89.6% win expectancy was a win percentage is what I was at. So I
take
did
that.
very well in March. Unfortunately, May has not been great to me. I'm at 50-50 right now. We're 500 on the month. So I have not been as great at all.
Do you know what the norm is? Like what do
Uh,
most
I don't.
Oh,
But
okay.
I know that part of the reason why, for me, specifically with prop betting, I've focused a lot on NBA props throughout the NBA season. So I've stuck to that right now through May until the playoffs are over. But
Sure.
betting props during the playoffs is a lot more difficult than the regular season because, I mean, things change. People are sitting out for certain games because of injuries, or people are going to play with an injury that they probably wouldn't have played with during the normal season.
Right.
And they're not as used to playing some of these teams as they are during the regular season. There's just that people aren't going to get shortened minutes like they do in the regular season, or things just change a lot. A lot of stuff is different. You don't know, as trends don't look as apparent as they do during the regular season. So it's a little bit more difficult to bet. I was like unfortunately Friday night, my prop of the day was Andrew Wiggins for over 16.5 points. And I lost by the hook. He had 16 points. So like things like that, like that's just a bad beat. That sucks.
I feel
But
like I would always bet. Maybe I'm hard on Wiggins. I would always bet the under.
no, he's hot
Really?
right
Is he
now.
hard?
He's hot right now. That was a play somebody gave out on my Twitter spaces today, was Andrew Wiggins tonight for over 24.5 PRA, which I actually really like that play, but I was scared to bet it myself because he burned me on Friday. So,
Oh, you're
so
holding it against him.
I didn't bet. Well, I've got certain players I literally will not bet now anymore. Jay Crowder being one of them. I will not bet him. And I love my sons, but no, like every time I bet him, he screws me. So it's just that I steer clear of Jay Crowder now.
No, listen, I will never bet on the Bears. No matter what. It's
I
because
feel
no
you
matter
on
what
that.
I do, if I bet anything, they always let me down. And if I bet against them, they always like, yeah, hey,
And they end
you
up
bet
just
you could.
playing great.
I guarantee you, if I bet against the Bears every single week, they would go undefeated.
They would win.
It might be a philosophy that I might try next season. Yeah.
Maybe you should.
All right. So now that's the good. What's the bad? Like, it could be embarrassing, or it could be, I don't want to know a bad streak because you kind of talked about Mazeman, but has there been something that you're just like, oh, I wish I could go back, like social media, you can't take it back, but you can delete?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I already know what it is. And I feel like you might know what it is too, because I got so much flack for it. A guy
I didn't want to bring it up, but okay, thank you.
Don't even get me started on that whole situation with Chuck. First of all, that man blocks me, so I can't even see it when it's made. But Second of all, I'm getting comfy for this right now. All right. Most people, that video went viral. So a lot of people in the sports betting community knew about. I tweeted out that I took UNC money line during the national championship game. I did this for reference, which people can believe me or not, whatever you want to do. I have the bet slip, so it doesn't matter. But I said I took UNC money line, which I thought I did earlier that morning. I was at the gym when I tweeted that out, looked at the score, and I was like, heck yeah. Like at half, I was like, wow, yeah, they're up. Like this is looking good for me. Then I ended up realizing I actually took the points with UNC. So I still ended up winning my bet. I tweeted that I took the points after they ended up outright losing. I still won my bet, which is fine. I bet on a different book that I don't work for because I have a free bet with them. And I am not allowed to be sharing other books bet slips because of my job.
Of course.
So people are like, show the bet slip, show the bet slip. I'm like, I literally can't. Like, I don't know what you want me to do.
It's not worth me losing my job to show you the bet slip.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. So unfortunately, I made a mistake. If I could go back now, and then people are like, but you deleted the tweets. I deleted the tweets because these two men were literally going at each other in the comment section, cussing each other out. And people were like tweeting at me, Taylor, are you going to condone this violent language on Twitter? And I was like, so I just deleted the tweets. Yeah. I was like, this is causing way too much of an uproar. And then I get crap for deleting the tweets. And I was like, if I could go back, I would have never tweeted UNC money line. Never, ever. But unfortunately, you know what? I did. I take the mistake. Trust me, from now on, slap on the wrist. I will never tweet unless I check my darn bet slips first.
I promised myself I wouldn't bring it up, so I'm glad that you did, because I saw it as an outsider, all right, saw it as an outsider looking in going, what are they like, what, and honestly I was like, what's the big deal? Like,
I don't really think it was that big of a deal either, but some people love to bring other people down, and you know what I say to myself, you know what my boss has said to me too, you're doing something right if you have a hater making a video about you. So I'm going to take it as a plus.
Well, in that case, I feel really good. I get a lot of hate, so I now feel better about myself.
That's a good thing.
So I wasn't going to ask you this, but I guess since it came up, let me ask you. So two things that came up there that I don't know what to do with. And it's interesting that someone said to you, are you going to condone this kind of language? So I purposely, let's be honest, we sometimes put out, controversial takes to see what the reaction is. Yeah. Some I say, hey, I believe in this. Others I just ask, hey, we've had this conversation. What do you think? And people get into these and I actually stay out and just sit on the outside and read. And I do read the comments. Maybe that's a bad thing, but, and I'm always like, am I responsible for what's going on in that comment section? Cause I started this. Like, do you feel like it was your responsibility to referee these two?
I don't know. Like, I felt like because so many people at that point, a lot of times I just block. Like, I'm just like, block that person if they're being inappropriate or whatever it might be and just move on with my day. But like with this, a bunch of people were like commenting, like, are you going to allow them to be talking like this? Blah, blah, blah. So I was like, oh gosh, if this many people are saying this, maybe I need to delete this.
Oh, so you were getting a lot of people saying.
Oh, it was like multiple people. Yeah. Like saying like, this guy needs to, like, this shouldn't be in the comments. I mean, he was throwing out like some real bad language. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'm going to delete this. So I did. And then I got hate for deleting it, but it is what it is at this point. What can you do?
Yeah. I actually go out of my way. I'm a glutton for punishment. I refuse to block anyone.
Really?
I'll stop. I won't respond to them. But I won't block them. I'm like, you know what? You have the freedom to say whatever you want. And the best part is, for me, maybe it's different. Then I'm going to ask you if it's different for a guy and a girl. Because I'm pretty sure it is. For me, I'm actually really impressed with the people who do follow me because they'll see those comments and they'll defend me. They'll say, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Like fluent. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, all right, it makes me feel good. Right. Now for you, what's some of the stuff you got to deal with that I probably don't have to deal with?
Being a girl is definitely different, especially in the sports industry. I mean, there's a lot of, and I've talked about this quite a few times before. There's of course, pros to it, but there's also, I would say there's more cons than there are pros. Of course, like a lot of people will be like, oh, like being a girl, it's a little bit easy. There's not as, and I don't even know if I'm saying this right. competition in the field because there's not as many like males, like there's not as many females in the space as there are males. But at the same time, there's also less space for us for that reason. So it makes it even more competitive in a way, because there are fewer spots for us, certain networks or sports books, or they're going to take on a lot more men than they are women. So it's a little bit more selective. So that's kind of a pro and a con. Also,
Well,
another big
if I may, I'll say, because the way I get what you're saying, you have fewer,
uh-huh.
even though there's fewer people in the space, there's fewer spots, so it's still competitive.
Yes.
I look at
Yes.
it from my perspective, and I'm like, there's more spots, but a lot of those spots, like at least half of them, go to ex pros. So I'm like, okay,
Yes. So
now
true.
my
I think
section
about that all
becomes
the time
smaller,
too.
right? Yeah.
I totally feel you. You know what's another big con that a lot of girls don't talk about, but I saw somebody talking about it on Twitter is women that are on camera. Boys, just get up, shower, like you're good to go for the day.
Speak
Like
for yourself.
shave,
We
maybe.
got
Okay, you
hair
don't gotta
product,
do
makeup,
bare.
eyes. We got to get rid of the crow's feet. Like we
No,
got, come on, we
come
got
on.
to make sure our skin tone is all.
No. I'm like, girls
No,
have so much, they
I
have
got to
it
get my
so much
nails
harder.
done.
And girls get so much more flack for
Yeah,
what they're wearing on
yeah,
camera, what they're not wearing on camera, what they're doing. Like everything's so much more sexualized, and especially because sports are geared towards a male audience. So, and then you get like both hands. It's like be sexy, but don't be too sexy.
right.
Be cute, but not too cute. Wear this, but don't wear that. It's a lot of
Yeah.
that, and
Be bubbly, but not ditzy. Be, intelligent, but don't be
yeah.
too smart because they don't. Yeah,
Yes, there's a lot of that. And I realized that in my first job in Nebraska, actually, because I was anchoring sports one night and my news director called me in after anchoring, and he was like, hey, we got to sit down and have a talk about a viewer just called in. And I was like, okay, like, what did I do? And he's like, it was a lady and she made a comment. And, when you're in local TV, they pretty much have to tell you a lot of like, if we get a viewer call, they've got to tell you what it was about. And he was like, she basically called and said she doesn't think you should be reporting sports from a side angle because of your body type. Because everybody thinks I'm really tall on social media. I'm not. I'm like really little, really petite. I'm
Oh,
5'1". Yeah,
that is, I
yeah,
would have thought the opposite.
yes.
Okay.
I don't know why everybody thinks that, but I'm 5'1". I'm really small, and I have curves in certain spots, and I'm little
Very,
though.
very well put. That's
Yes, I have curves in certain spots, and I have a little body though. So I'm like, I know what I look like from a side angle, but to her, I shouldn't be standing to the side because my silhouette looks a certain way. I was not, I was covered up completely. Like there was
right.
nothing to be seen, but like she didn't think that was appropriate. And I remember my news director telling me, coming to me and saying this. And I went home and I cried for like 2 hours and called my mom because I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, that's my body. Like, I don't know how to fix that. Like, and she was like, one, you can't, but she's like, two, you've got to realize if you're going to put yourself out there like this on social media, in
Right.
television, everything, you're going to get hate, flat criticism. And she's like, you're going to have a really thick skin if this is what you want to do.
Right.
And I remember
she's right, because that's one
she
thing
is.
that a guy probably wouldn't have to, like, no one's going to say, hey, your gut is or anything else is sticking out too much on your side profile, don't stand to the side.
Right.
It's not something you look at. Although I do want to bring up, they were making fun of I was going to call him Chuck, but for those that don't, Charles Barkley today, because they said he looked like Pepto-Bismol, making fun of his suit. So it does. So some of the clothing stuff, okay.
Some and
But
some,
I know
but
what
like
you
he
mean. I know
probably
what you
looks at that. I like learned very early on like take it with a grain of salt and move on.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and now through time as I built like, larger followings on social media and things like that, I'm like, I get hate daily. And I'm like, do I care anymore? No. I'm like, what? I don't even
Honestly,
know these people.
it doesn't bother you at all?
Honestly, no.
Good for you.
For the
Okay.
most part, no.
Because there are some that I read and I'm like, oh, that's kind of struck a nerve and I got to take a minute. Like,
I will say
there's some that hit too close to home,
There was one guy, I would say the most recent one that like bothered me was this like back in January, maybe, I'm not really sure, but I was it was a picture of me and a girl, Gabby Gowdy. She works for FanDuel. She's also in the sports betting industry.
Yes.
Her and I were together for the weekend. We took a picture and somebody commented on it saying that her and I were essentially both fat. And I was just like, that bothered me a lot. Like, I was just like, one, like rude. Two, who even are you? You're just an internet troll. And three, I'm definitely not fat. So I was just like, so blown away. And that one did bother me a little bit. I was a little pissed, but like on the daily, for the most part, I just like,
Yeah,
a
no,
little,
I hear you.
swipe it off.
I hear
I'm
what you're
like,
saying. I hear what you're saying.
it is
There,
what
like I
it
said, there's for the most part, I brush them off. But then, if you go to my TikTok today, there's one that struck a nerve and I responded to. So I
is.
should say that, like there are some that are just like, enough,
the, the way I
because
see
the
it
way.
though,
Oh, so yeah, go ahead.
there's a lot of people like, when you start to build these social followings, if we looked at every positive comment the way we looked at every negative comment,
Yeah.
there's so much more positivity and good out there than there is bad. And I wish that us as a society, as people, we focused and we're a little bit more grateful for the good things. Cause I'm like, heck, I have a lot more people that care about what I have to say and enjoy my content more than people that don't. So I need to look at it from a positive aspect. And the other people who don't,
Yeah.
they
There's
can
there's this
do what they want.
great story about Albert Einstein, and I think it was he that put it out long time ago, obviously, because it's
Uh-huh.
Albert Einstein. And he said he was up on a blackboard, and most people, when I tell the story, go, "What's the blackboard?" But he's up on a blackboard and he's doing the 9 times tables, and he's like 1 times 9, 2 times 9, right? And he does them all, and he gets them all obviously correct, right? 9, 18, 27, whatever. And he gets, I think, 9 times 10, and he puts 91. And everyone starts to snicker and laugh and make fun of him. And he says,
Uh-huh.
"See, that's society. I got 9 out of 10, bang on.
See?
No one applauded the
Focus
9 that
on
I
the
got right.
bad one.
They focused on the one that I got wrong,
Yeah.
and they all made fun of me." He goes, "That's the problem." And so
Yes.
I've started to look at it this way. If you take the time to go online, especially those that, like, there's, sometimes you'll see the same person giving you negative, all right. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if you take the time to go and follow me enough that you can go and put negative comment, like, what's going on
Right.
in your day-to-day life,
Exactly.
that's what you
Exactly.
feel is going to make you feel better. Like,
Better.
I don't get that part.
I
So
don't either. I totally agree with you. All
we're going to end with the most important part, because
right.
we want to go win some money. So
Yeah.
let's maybe, I might ask you like for 2 or 3 pieces of advice. So I'm going to, like, for the beginner, for like the novice, and for the pros, like, what are the things that each
Okay.
one should kind of look for when they're doing prop bets to increase their chances? Like, obviously you
Okay.
can't tell them this is how you win, because
Right.
we'd be in a much
It's
better
gambling.
situation if we knew everything. But
Right. So I would say for a beginner, when you're first starting to gamble and you're looking at betting in general, prop betting is a good place to start because it's a good way to, some people struggle with like understanding the spread, or I feel like money line and totals are they're obviously a little more self-explanatory, but a lot of people struggle, I feel like, with understanding the spread at first. So I feel like props are a good way to look at, like, okay, it's a set number. I know this specific player. And do I think he's gonna make, like, if we're looking at baseball, I like K props a lot. I like strikeout props. If I'm looking at like Logan Webb's pitching for the Giants tonight, he's a good strikeout guy. Is he gonna go over or under? I don't know what the number's set at. 5.5 strikeouts. It's easy to look and see. Do I think he's gonna have 6 strikeouts? Do I think he's gonna have 5 or less strikeouts? Like, it's a good way to start. And I also think for beginners, bet on players that you specifically follow and know how they kind of work. If you're a big basketball guy, maybe start with your team. If you're a Bulls fan, start with guys on the Bulls. Like, you already have an interest set into that team. So it'll make it even more fun for you, because then there's a possible chance that you could win some money as well as watching your favorite game. So I think that's a good way to start, looking at players or specific teams that you like and people that you already have knowledge about.
Makes sense.
I think for somebody intermediately, the biggest.
Okay, I'm gonna pay more attention here because I feel like this is where I am.
So for me, a big thing that I like to look at when it comes to props, and when I started getting more into doing my own research with prop betting specifically, and I would say my 2 areas, 3 now, because NBA was never big for me until this season. I've gotten a lot more into NBA betting. Before it was football and baseball. Now I'm getting a lot more into NBA, and it's honestly been my most profitable out of all three leagues. So when I look at specifically right now, I guess we'll talk baseball, basketball, because that's what's happening. The first thing I do is I look at games like we're talking tonight, Western Conference Finals. We've got the Mavs and the Warriors. I'm going to go first to my sports book, Superbook Sports, a little plug there. I'm going to go to Superbook Sports, and I'm going to look at some of the player prop lines. Where are things set at? And then I'm going to go look. The first thing I do is let's example for tonight, my favorite play is going to be Klay Thompson over 2.5 assists. He's not a big assist guy normally during the regular season. So I'm going to go to ESPN and I pull up his stat line. And I start looking at, okay, what is he averaging statistically wise assists against the Mavs throughout this whole season? How is he looking against the Mavs during the postseason right now? And then how is he looking assist wise during the regular season? Then I go and I look at more stats on Fantasy Pros, and I'm going to go to the Mavs defensively and see how they match up specifically against Klay Thompson when it comes to assists, where they stand overall when it comes to his player position with assists. So that's kind of my two big things that I look at. And specifically for Klay Thompson, if we're talking about him, he averages 2.4 assists during the postseason, but against the Mavs all year, he's been averaging 4 assists, and he's gone over 2.5 every single game against the Mavs in this postseason as well. So I think over 2.5 is a good bet. If you're looking at trends, if you're looking at stats, that's what made sense to me today. So that's why I took that as my favorite prop. So that's kind of a little bit more.
I should have talked to you about an hour ago. I could have made it.
Yeah. I'm like, so looking at stats big time. That's like another thing I look at with baseball. I like K props a lot. I like strikeout props because I think they're a little bit easier to work with because you're not looking at as many games if you're looking at a starter compared to if you're looking at a guy, is he going to go over a half a hit? He might have a good game. He might not. You have somebody who could hit 2 bombs in a game and then the next day go 0 for 4 up at the plate. So I feel like total bases is a little bit harder to bet in baseball. That's why I like strikeout props a little bit more. You can kind of look at ERAs, look at how they've matched up against that team in the past, batting lineups, lefties, righties. There's a lot more statistics behind it. So that's kind of my intermediate. Then if I'm going for my advanced people,
for the pro, yeah.
I do all of that when it comes to statistics and looking at which props I like. But then you also, of course, want to look at your ROI when you're an expert, and you're going to look for more plays that have more value. So
like betting $100 to win 112, probably not worth it, right? At that,
maybe not.
But maybe,
I mean,
or like 1,000 to win 100. Like, I don't know.
My prop.
What's the line you think?
Like my prop tonight, with odds were -106, so it wasn't a plus money play, but I still feel like, and again, like I was saying, betting props in the postseason is a little bit more difficult. So a lot of those lines are like literally right there. It was like over 2.5 assists was at -106, under 2.5 assists at -112. So it's not a big change.
Right.
So it's a lot more even, closer to like a pick 'em when it comes to a lot of this stuff. But when I look for ROI, return on investment, and plus money plays, a lot of times I will look for when there's a specific trend in the stats, but then maybe I think they're going to have a drop off night where they're like, you look at, I think one that I really liked, this was a while ago, was like Joel Embiid. I took his under on points one game back in the postseason, and it hit because of the fact, one, I knew he was coming off of injury after his orbital and everything was going on. So I was like, okay, I think he's going to score less, probably not get into the paint as much because,
he doesn't want to get hit in the face. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And also I felt like you were looking at a lot of his numbers, and he's coming off of like, games where he's scoring 40 plus, things like that. But the line was set a little bit lower. So made sense there. I'm going to stop for a second.
Your dog definitely wants to get into the conversation.
Yeah.
I get that all the time.
But I look more at, okay, is there a trend that I think is going to be broken possibly here? Have they been on too steady of a line where, like, another one that last week was Luka Doncic for over 9.5 rebounds. And everybody's like, well, he's gone over 10 in his last like 3 games. But it's like, okay, but is he going to go over 10 again? I
Yeah,
don't know.
he's due to have a bad
And
game. Yeah.
he went under that game. Exactly. He's due to not have a double game. So sometimes you got to look at the trends. And I go a lot when I'm looking at ROI and plus money plays. I go a lot off of gut feeling on what I think sometimes. And sometimes it works out for you. Sometimes it doesn't.
So let me ask you one, because I heard this one today. Coming off a win in these playoffs, the Boston Celtics are averaging an 18-point loss coming off a win.
Okay.
And Tatum has underperformed. Am I going under on Tatum, or is this they're gonna knock out they're gonna take advantage of this series and they're gonna have back-to-back good games? What's your gut tell you?
I'm going with the Heat tomorrow. I think I think both of those franchises and fan bases, they both are like so kind of cocky. Like after the Heat went up 2-1, Heat fans were like, we got this in the bag. Like the series is ours. But then Boston's the same way. I'm like, you guys are basically back to 0-0 right now. It's dead even, 2-2. You guys they're very even-keeled teams too. They're both very
But how do you feel that Boston Boston has sort of cut you off, but that Boston's, I believe I heard this stat, correct me if I'm wrong, has won 14 of the 16 quarters of these 4 games.
They have. I don't care.
You don't care about that? Well, if you're betting props, can't you bet on certain quarters?
At the end, unless you're gonna bet first half or you're gonna bet a quarter, then like if you're going straight up like money line or you're looking at the spread and stuff, these teams are very evenly matched. And I think it could go either or. I think the series is going to go to 7 personally. I think that's going to be our more exciting series. The Mavs are done. If they win tonight, they're still not winning the series. Sorry. It's over.
No one's ever come back from a 3-0 in the NBA. So
the Warriors are going to the finals. The Warriors are probably going to win it all. And that's
why are you rolling your eyes with that?
Because I'm a Suns fan.
And yeah. Okay.
Oh God. Like it was heartbreaking after seeing that we had a franchise record winning season, the best team in the NBA, and we go down in a game 7 to Dallas as crappy as we did. I went to game 7 too. Horrible. Worst game 7 I've ever been to.
When your team loses, that typically is the
well, it was also
especially the way they lost.
Though. Like I was at least hoping I was gonna get if they were gonna lose, let's lose by a tight game. That game was over at halftime. Like I was like, this just sucks. To see them play as well as they did all season, honestly, they didn't play great the whole postseason. I was surprised that the game against the Pelicans went to 6.
Yeah.
Like,
is Chris Paul? Do you think Chris Paul's hurt? You're closer to it. Do you think he's hurt?
I think there's something going on there.
Yeah.
I could see something going on with Chris Paul. I want Chris Paul to win one before he retires real bad. And I have a soft spot for them too. Because like I was saying, I covered the Suns when they were god awful, horrible. And I remember Ayton's first season and I was sideline reporting. He's also the nicest guy ever. He's like my favorite son by far. So I remember like going in the locker room even after a horrible loss, he was still like the smiliest, like happiest guy. And there are just so many of those guys in that locker room are just so nice, such good guys. And they're just team players. And I'm like, they just deserve it. The city of Phoenix deserves it too. Like they've never won.
Listen, I've lived in 4 different countries and like 25 different cities. And I will tell you this, you don't know this. I didn't live in Phoenix. I lived in Scottsdale. Maybe my second favorite city to live in other than Toronto where I live now. Like I loved living there. It was the weather helps quite a bit too. It was really nice. The people were great. I think the weather makes you happy. That's why you haven't stopped smiling. It's just
you wake up every single day and you've got sun shining.
Listen, I said I wanted to be a weatherman. Because
that's funny because I loved weather when I was younger too.
But in Scottsdale, it's okay. The next 37 days will be sunny and 102. Well, I'll see you in a month.
It's funny because like I have, friends and people that work in the local TV news out here, and they'll talk about, so if we get a monsoon, that's like top story news because if you get something
I used to love those monsoons. They were great.
People want to know what's going on, like with the weather, because we don't get much out here.
Okay. I know I said that was the last thing I'm going to ask you, but this is the last thing I'm going to ask you. Then I promise I'm going to let you go because people don't believe me when I tell them this. So please, I hope you know what I'm about to ask you. When there's a monsoon, can you please not correct me if I'm wrong. Please let me know that you know this law so that I can put this to bed for the people who don't believe me. There is an idiot driver law in Arizona.
Oh, 100%. When
Thank you.
it's not even when it's monsooning though. It's even if there are sprinkles of rain, everybody's like, oh my God, like people don't know what to do. They don't know how to drive. It's like they completely forgot what they were doing. It's like they just are so confused. And I will admit, last season, this past summer, was the worst monsoon season Arizona's seen in the 5 years that I've lived here. It was really bad. My mom and sister were actually visiting, and the whole time they were here, it rained every single day. I had standing water in my backyard. We got stuck in a restaurant because they wouldn't let anybody leave. All the power went out. Trees were down everywhere. It was really bad. So I was like, I don't blame people like last season for something like that, but like, come on, guys. I also grew up in the Midwest where like we have every type of weather. So I'm like, I'm used to, I'm like, the snow, the rain, tornadoes.
But do you know, maybe you don't know this. Do you know that, those sections where it says don't drive, when you see water,
right?
In these sections, right? Do you know that if you drive your car into that and it gets swept away in the water, your insurance will not cover you?
Really? I didn't know that.
That's the idiot driver law. See, okay, you gotta look that up because people, I keep hearing they don't know that.
I did not know that, but I believe you.
Because it says don't drive when you see the water, because everyone thinks it's this deep, but it's not. When those monsoons come,
there's a lot of water.
They have the water purposely like funneling through there, and it's like it'll take your car away. So I had someone, it happened to someone, and they're like, I can't believe my insurance doesn't cover me. And I said, yeah, it's because of this law.
Part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy.
So that's the idiot driver law. You should look it up in Arizona. I think it's
I will.
Wonderful. And just on a side note, the first year I moved to Arizona, so this is why they kicked me out. I should say my first year was in Tucson, and then I moved to Scottsdale after my first year because I lived in Tucson. No offense, I love Tucson, but it snowed.
Really? It snowed here
snow stuck on like the windshields, not like Chicago or Toronto snow, but like snow.
I think that it was the second or third year I lived here. It snowed a decent amount. The mountains were covered. Planes couldn't take off. It was, it was like actually pretty bad. Not that it was anything substantial, but it was like it stuck to the ground. Like it was cold enough.
Well, they blame me because I moved there from Canada, and they said I brought the weather, and I was like, sorry,
you're at fault for the snow.
It's my fault for all the snow. All right, Taylor, thank you so much. It's at Math Sports on Twitter and TikTok, and it's Shy Sports Chick on Instagram. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It has been really informative. So make sure to give her a follow, and thank you for watching The Fluent.
Like me.